Hey everyone, I just talked about how to spot scams in my last video. In this one, I'm going to talk about hacking attempts and phishing attempts. Hacking attempts are when somebody's trying to access your stuff, like your Bitcoin, and phishing attempts is basically when they're putting bait in the water and trying to hack your stuff by getting you to click a link, install a malicious app, or something like that. So the easiest way is the source, if you get an email, is the source email address. Hackers are super lazy, and typically they'll say, the email will supposedly come from Coinbase support, but then you'll look at the actual email address and it's, io.romania.insanity.stupidity.com. I mean, it's just some crazy URL that is clearly not associated with a reputable organization. So the easiest way to spot phishing attempts, which are people phishing to try to get your login credentials, is to just check where the email came from. Also, almost never is any organization going to reach out to you proactively. So you're almost never going to get a text message, or certainly not WhatsApp or anything like that from a reputable person saying, hey, you need to secure your account, provide your login credentials here. So first of all, they're almost never going to proactively reach out to you, which is, automatically a red flag if anybody proactively reaches out to you by message or email or anything. So first of all, rarely are they ever going to proactively reach out. And two, if they do, and it's by email, you can check and make sure it's a legitimate sender. Now, it's not perfect. There is super advanced ways that hackers can make it look like it comes from a legitimate address, but usually they're too lazy to do that, so it's just a big red flag. The second is that you can usually tell by what the URLs, which is the web addresses are that are in an email. So normally when you get a phishing attempt of somebody saying, hey, you need to secure your account, please log in here. If you hover your mouse over the link, you'll realize that although it appears to be, for example, a Coinbase support email, when you hover your mouse over the link, it'll actually say, some crazy address that is not, clearly not Coinbase. Now, sometimes hackers will get a little sophisticated. So, for example, the web address will say coinbase.io.foreigndomain.com. And so you'll see the word Coinbase in there, but what matters is it a coinbase.com email, or is it just, is it just an email where they buried the word Coinbase, a web address that they buried the word Coinbase in there. So that's the easiest thing. If you get an email, check where it's from, and then second, see if the links in the email look legitimate. If you're not sure, you can always email me, joel@joelbaumgar.com. That's JOEL@JOELBOMGAR.com. I'm always happy to check it for you, although obviously don't send me anything sensitive. But if you just want a set of eyeballs to see if something looks legit, happy to, eyeball that. Obviously don't send me links to password resets or, login codes, anything like that. But sometimes people will get an email out of the blue saying, hey, you need to, enhance the security of your account by enabling two-factor authentication, and they're just not sure if they can safely click the links. I'm happy to check them out for you. Again, my email address, Joel, Joel, @joelbaumgar.com. That's JOELBOMGAR.com. So it's my first name and then first and last name together.com. So, but you can usually tell that way. On an iPhone, for example, you can hold your finger on a link and see where it takes you. But obviously don't actually, you don't want to follow it and all of that. So it's easier to do on a computer where you can hover your mouse over it. But anyway, just assume the general rule is if somebody proactively reaches out to you, start with the suspicion that it could be a hacking attempt or a phishing attempt unless you're expecting it. Now, if you're authenticating your photo ID on Coinbase and they email you saying, hey, here's the link to authenticate, and you just requested authentication, well, it's probably legitimate. So, you need to check it, but, it's probably legit. If you get an email out of the blue that you're not expecting, you should be especially suspicious. But anyway, everybody on the planet is trying to find a way to separate you from your financial resources of any kind, not just Bitcoin. And so the best way is just be on the lookout, be sort of eternally suspicious, and especially proactive attempts, and even phone calls. I've gotten regular phone calls, for example, from Wells Fargo that are the actual Wells Fargo phone number inbound that you talk to somebody and it's actually, a scammer or a hacker on the other side. So especially on phone calls, they figured out how to spoof the phone number and the caller ID where it actually says Wells Fargo. and the source phone number is the same one that shows up on the back of your, for example, Wells Fargo debit card or something like that, if you have one of those. So anyway, they'll call you and they'll say, hey, I'm from Wells Fargo. Your phone caller ID actually says Wells Fargo, and they'll ask you to verify that it's them by checking if it's coming from the phone number that's on the back of your credit card or debit card, and it actually does match. But the answer is, of course, it's not actually Wells Fargo. They typically tell you that, there's been some fraudulent activity on your account. Did you really book a flight from New York to San Francisco? And of course, you'll say no, and they'll be like, oh, I was afraid of that. It's, I think your account's been hacked. I'm going to send you a, password reset key. I need you to read it to me over the phone. Well, when you get that key, it says do not share it with anybody. And then, of course, they ask you to share it over the phone because they're, sitting at your login prompt doing a password reset, trying to get into your account. So anyway, just be on the lookout for that. The biggest red flag is proactive communication that you did not expect. But you can also usually figure it out what's a hack and what's not based on the source email address or whatever something came from and where it's trying to take you. And the safest thing, if you think you need to do something, the safest thing is always to ignore the communication and try to get where they want you to go separately. So, for example, if Wells Fargo claims to call you, then just say, hey, I'll call you back. And call them back at the number, talk to an account rep and say, hey, was somebody trying to call me? And they're going to look up your account and they're going to say, nope, that wasn't us. So, it's always safest if, you get an email from, that's claiming to be from Coinbase, is just go log into your account separately from the email, not by actually clicking the links in it unless you're expecting it or unless it's very clearly legitimate. But if you know what you need to do and you can bypass clicking the links, you can safely do that by just going over to Coinbase.com, logging in, and then you are not potentially subject to getting hijacked by a malicious web address. But anyway, usually it is legit if you're expecting it, and you can usually tell if it's from a legit source, and you can usually tell, if you pay close attention, whether the links are real legitimate web addresses to somewhere like Coinbase.com or whether they really secretly take you somewhere else. So that's a few thoughts on how not to get hacked or not fall subject to phishing attempts. And of course, don't run any software. If you see a pop-up that asks you to change your security settings or to install software or to trust some certificate, all of those are bad signs. If you're not expecting it to do that, certainly do not click the buttons that give it whatever permission it's trying to get. So hopefully that's helpful. Thanks, everyone.